Hi everyone, my name is Yusha Ibn Sarovar and I'm from Group 4 from tutorial 7 to 8. So today my topic of presentation is about the terrorism in hospitality and tourism industry. So moving on, what is terrorism? So actually there are numerous definitions of terrorism, but from the history of modern terrorism, which began with the French Revolution and has evolved ever since. The most common cause or roots of terrorism include civilizations or cultural clashes, globalization, or the religion. The mostly is about the Israel and Palestinian conflict, or even the Russian invasion of Afghanistan. And if you try to go more personal, which is from individual based reasons for terrorism or frustration, deprivation, and so on. But in simple case, what is actually terrorism? If you try to know in a simple way, terrorism is the unlawful use or threatened use of force or violence against individual or property to coerce and intimidate government or societies, often to achieve political or religious ideological objectives. So that is about the word terrorism. And so moving on to the next part is about the types of terrorism. First of all, there are numerous types of terrorism, but to understand more easily, there are the main five types, which are the most common one used by the people. So first one is the state-sponsored terrorism, which consists of terrorist acts on a state or government by a state or government. So the state-sponsored is mostly sponsored by the state or the government. For example, is the latest or the recent one is the ISIS case, where the ISIS, as they're saying, there are numerous conspiracies that they're funded by the U.S. government or the Israeli government. And the second one is dissent terrorism. So what is dissent terrorism? Which are terrorist groups which have rebelled against their own government. For example, the Afghanistan or the Yemeni. In the Yemeni, the Houthis, they are fighting with their own government to get their own land. And the next one is the terrorist the left and the right. So, what is the terrorist left and the right? Is the far right group, which are groups rooted in political ideology. For example, in the USA, there are like far right groups which are mostly based on one group of political leaders. And the next one is the religious terrorism, which are terrorist groups are extremely religiously motivated. And for example, is the one in Pakistan or Afghanistan. These Al Qaeda or the Taliban, they are the mostly influenced by their own religion. And the criminal terrorism, the last one, which is the terrorist acts used to aid in crime and criminal profit. So this group is like for their own benefit they're doing this, but there is no kind of other ideology. And the next, so moving on to the next part, which is about the causes of terrorism. So the first cause of terrorism is the social and the political reason. People choose terrorism when they are trying to right what they perceive to be a social or political or historical wrong, when they have been stripped of their land or rights or denied this. For example, the Irish Republican Army (IRA) bombed English target in the 1980s to make the point that they felt their land was colonized by British imperialists. And moving on to the next part is the illiteracy, which is one of the causes for terrorism. The lack of education amongst the people has been put forward as a prime reason of terrorism. And uneducated persons are easy to persuaded by committing this kind of acts, criminal acts, or being going into terrorism. The third one is the religious. Perhaps the most commonly held belief today is that terrorism is caused by religion, though it is not the main cause of terrorism. Religion does play a significant role in driving some forms of it. The fourth one is the psychological. People get offended and harmed by the justice system that they choose to resort to acts of violence in order to propose ongoing injustice. And for the reason they hate, or the reason for that is the desire for power, to go for the power and to diminish all the laws and injustice they have to face. So the impacts of terrorism. What are the impacts that the terrorism has done? Is the two impacts. One is the social and the economic. First of all, the social impacts. Terrorism poses a serious law and order problem and leads to disintegration of the society. The incident of murder, torture, mutilation, kidnapping, arson, and extortion create atmosphere of suspicion, fear, and panic all around, and life becomes uncertain. The terrorists kill unarmed civilians, including women and children. So these are the social impacts. And moving on to the next impact is economic one, which is the loss of life, infrastructure, and business, and government spending on security. We can see that every terrorism event always kill the innocent people, and the innocent one are the victims. It destroyed public properties and individual properties. For example, the September 11 attacks, where loss of life and property cost insurance companies close to US 40 million, which is the September 11, which happened in the New York, sorry, the Washington DC. And when we see the graph, the global economic impact of terrorism, day by day it is increased. Day by day, the graph, the statistics is is more on the increasing side. So moving on, what are the impacts that terrorism has done in countries? And the most recent one is the New Zealand, where we see New Zealand economic freedom score is 84.1%, making its economy the third freest in the 2020 index, which is on the right side, on the right top bottom, we can see the regional ranking, which is after Singapore and Hong Kong. The New Zealand one is one of the top three in the whole world, and its overall score has decreased by 0.3% recently because of the attack. The economy of New Zealand has ranked as one of the freest in the world over the past 25 years. Steady GDP growth reflects the outstanding performance, as we can see how much New Zealand is improving day by day. But the recent terrorist attacks, which happened, and it devastated the whole country. The country was in shock. So what happened is the two consecutive mass shootings occurred at the mosque in a terrorist attack, which happened in a Christchurch in the city and the state and the New Zealand during Friday prayer on 15 March, and it killed nearly 51 people and injured 49, which was carried out by a single gunman who entered both the mosques, began at one of the mosques at An-Nur and the other one is Riccarton, and ended at the Linwood Islamic State, which happened just in a 10 minutes duration of time. So moving on, what have the impact? What has the done on the economic side? So terrorist acts cause ripple effects through the economy that have negative impacts. The most obvious is the direct economic destruction of the property and lives. And terrorism indirectly affects the economy by creating market uncertainty, xenophobia, loss of tourism, and increased insurance claims. And the next part is about the social, what the impact have done on the social side. And the first one is terrorism poses a serious law and order problem and leads to disintegration of the society. And the incident of murder, torture, mutilation, kidnapping, arson, and extortion create an atmosphere of suspicion and the panic inside the own state or the government or the own country. Now, how to overcome the issues regarding the terrorist attack? The government wants tourism growth to be the productive, sustainable, and inclusive. As we can see on the right side, the government had initiative plans after the incident that they will boost the economy by the tourism industry, as New Zealand have one of the most tourist attractions in the whole world. So it is rapidly growing its interest in the tourism industry and funding more on the tourist tourism. And the tourism is the biggest export industry, contributing 21% of foreign exchange earnings. And the government strategy is the economy to improve the economy, the environment, and the international and domestic visitors to increase. And then for the New Zealanders, for their own interests, for their own tourism, for the local tourism, they want to involve the communities more and more. And for the regional, as New Zealand is part of the Australia, the Australian government, the Commonwealth, so they want to regionalize this more and to improve their own economy. Moving on to the next part is about Sri Lanka, a country which is situated in the south side of the Asia, and which is in the Indian subcontinent, an island, and which the main economic sectors of the country are tourism, tea export, apparel, textile, rice production, and other agriculture products. So we can see that Sri Lanka has one of the most income comes from the tourism industry. In addition to these economic sectors, overseas employment contributes highly in foreign exchange, which is about 90% of expatriate Sri Lankans reside in the Middle East. And moving on, the terror attack. What happened in the terror attack? It is actually related to the one that happened to the New Zealand, because the one that the attack was on the Christian sites, which is the churches, hotel housing, and the complex. And the injured one is about 500 plus, and the deaths were 269 plus 8 bombers, including the bombers which attacked, which they killed themselves. and which happened on April. So the attack, which happened like consecutively after the attack in New Zealand, and the motive was Islamic extremism, suspected retaliation for the Christchurch mosque attack, and the target was mainly the Christians and the tourists. So we can see the tourists are the main targets and the Christians. And what it has done on the economy of the Sri Lankan economy is that tourism in Sri Lanka is the country's third largest foreign exchange earner and employs around 135,000 to 150,000 in the hotel industry. The industry had expected 3 million tourist arrivals and revenue of 5 billion in 2019, but due to the attack on tourists, the Hotels Association of Sri Lanka estimated a loss of 1.5 billion in tourism and earnings for the year. And we can see the tourist hotels for fear of 1.5 revenue loss from terror attacks, the recent one. And the social impact, the government ministers, one of the ministers, Patali Champika Ranawaka, called for an Islamic study centers to be brought under the control and supervision of the University Grants Commission and the Education Ministry, because mostly happened with the Islamic ideology, and because of that ideology the government wants to take initiative to restrict in the Muslim parts. And the Islamic channel, including the one of the famous one is a Peace TV, which is run by the preacher and televisionalist Zakir Naik, was officially banned in the country by the main satellite cable operates, and so on, and in the local TV channels also. And the broadband network following the attacks, even before the governmental invention, the broadband were more now restricted and more monitored by the government. So now is how to overcome the issues. First of all, tourism is the Sri Lanka's one is reaching a target of US 7 billion, which earned in 2020, and the number of tourist arrivals in Sri Lanka tumbled 70.8% year on year to 71 and 3,000 71,370 in March 2020, after a 17.7% drop in the previous month. And we can see in 2016 the tourism has the earning of US 3.5 billion, and for we can see that they have reached a certain amount. And the government have improved have done a strategy where they can increase their tourism industry, which is improving the governance and regulation, marketing and communicating effectively, which is one of the which where on the social medias platforms they can increase their uh, efficiently increase their efficiency, and developing sustainable destinations where Sri Lanka has numerous number of islands where they can attract more tourists based on this marketing and communications, and lifting the industry standards, as the many parts of Sri Lanka where there is the rural, if there they have these hotels and industrialization, then tourists will come more and more. And we can see that there are numerous reports in the CNN and the Guardian. There are many news regarding this attack. So as we can see, Spain has a huge impact on its economy in the whole world and also in Europe. And the result indicates that the terrorist attacks caused a loss of nearly to 212 million euros to the regional country of Madrid, equivalent to 0.16% of the regional GDP, which is 0.3% of the national GDP. That this concern confirms that the immediate economic dimension of a terrorist attack, such as one of the 311, apart from the human catastrophic consequences, is relatively low. And the social impact, to some social communities, the behavior posed by tourists is termed disrespectful and ignorant, because the terrorist attacks were one of the tourists, not a local one. So the impression is from the local people as is like the tourists are termed disrespectful and ignorant, and this has many times sparked clashes within the host communities by people who have seen ignorant of the pre-established customs and values, as their customs and values were not respected. So they're turned more, they're seen more on the part of having clashes with the tourists. As we can see, there has been a decline in the economics. And how to overcome the issues. Since 2012, the number of tourists has increased by 31%, with more than 75 million coming to Spain annually. So after the impact which happened in those years from early 2000 to 2010, but afterward gradually the the economy have increased a lot. and in terms of tourist attraction, as Spain is one of the most tourist attraction in all of Europe, and as it has numerous beaches to travel. And the earning from the sector have mitigated the impact of the economic crisis, and tourism is also a vital source of employment, providing jobs to 30% of the country's workforce. And Spain needs to hold on to its tourism sector. After all, it contributes 11% of the country's GDP, but it also needs to manage it properly if it is to be sustainable and of to benefit the all class of people. So moving on to the last part, which is the summary and conclusion, which is the impact on tourism industry. What have the global tourism have done on the tourism industry? A panel data has shown that terrorist attacks decrease the female labor force participation. This is one of the vital force, as the female labor is one of the now the trending and the most important aspects of the whole world economy, and the increased GDP and the increase the gap between male and female labor force participation in a statistically significant way. So if we can see that both male and female labor force are important to this industry, and the greatest effects were found from transitional attacks and those against the government entities. And we can see that on this part that the most effective was on the Sri Lanka has struggled to increase its foreign reserves, because Sri Lanka is mostly the mostly economic growth comes from the tourist attractions and foreign reserves. And strategy to overcome. So the strategy is just the tree, which is the culture exchange programs, where now the whole world is now globalized, where the new technologies have increased a lot, and the countries are more connected to each other. So culture exchange is one of the vital one, and the third one is the responsible destination marketing, which is the social media, where if it's maintained well, and the marketing is the marketing is emphasized more efficiently, then the global the industry will the industry will increase, and on a vast majority, and ensuring safety and security for all. This is one of the most vital one, is to ensure the safety and security for all the people. To ensure, if it's ensured properly, the tourists will come more and more. So these are the three strategies that how to overcome, and that's all from me. Thank you.